Now then, Rory, let's kick off with the man of the moment, Alexander Isak. And talkSPORT reporter Ben Jacobs gave us the latest.
Yeah, I think Liverpool are waiting for the right time in the market to potentially make a move. A bid seems to be anticipated at the Newcastle end. A bit more cautious from Liverpool. I think a few steps are needed. The first is almost Newcastle to say Isak is for sale. And the only way they're going to do that is by bringing in replacements. And therefore, it may not matter who the forward or forwards are, but I think one or two have to come in or at least be lined up before perhaps Liverpool turn their clear interest in Isak into something formal, because Newcastle already know, as indicated directly by Liverpool earlier in the window, they're prepared to make an offer that would break the British transfer record. So timing is everything. We know that Newcastle are not giving up yet on Johan Wissa, but it's difficult because Brentford at the moment want 40, if not 50 million. Benjamin Šeško's an option. It's an expensive deal, but it might unlock the Isak situation. So I think what Newcastle do in the market and all the noise and all the politics and all the tension, it's very much a Newcastle challenge in recruitment and, of course, with the player. And then once all that is sorted in the next days, Liverpool may then make their move.
Rory, if Liverpool get Isak, is it over and done with? Is it a done deal?
Yes, I believe it is. I think that Alexander Isak is undoubtedly the best striker in the league. Liverpool are already the best team in the league. They've already had the best window so far in the league. If you then add everything that I've just said to the fact that they then go and sign the best striker in the league, I don't see how anybody stops them. Now, of course, there's always jeopardy in football. The beauty of football is the jeopardy, is the fact that it is unpredictable. But looking at it just through the lens of fact, it would seem like Liverpool would be on the trajectory for retaining the Premier League title, which would be significant for them. Yeah. They haven't retained a title since 1982.
Yeah, it would be huge. And, you know, Arne Slot coming in, you know, when he took that job, a lot of people were like, well, it's going to take a little while for him to find his feet and this and that and the other, but he's come straight in. They've backed him as well, let's be honest. It helps when you've got PSR headroom and you've won the league and all of these different things. But who would have foresaw this summer, you know, that Liverpool have had, bringing in Ekitike, bringing in Wirtz, bringing in Frimpong, and now potentially bringing in Isak. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's a fantastic window. It's the perfect window. They've gone out into the market and they're flexing their muscle because they're champions. They're champions for a reason. And what comes with being champions is the ability to bully. And the statements that they've made this window. Like, Hugo Ekitike was a Newcastle United player. And Newcastle United are a big club, an ambitious club, moving in the right direction. They won silverware. They're in the Champions League. And Ekitike had basically signed for them until Liverpool decided to actually remind Newcastle of their place in the food chain. And they made a few phone calls and immediately got Ekitike through the door. Ekitike then went off on pre-season to the Far East with Liverpool. Then Liverpool had the luxury of pursuing Alexander Isak without any pressure, because they already got Ekitike through the door. So they've got their team that is capable of winning the league. Now they can focus on Alexander Isak, and it doesn't matter if it becomes messy. It doesn't matter if it becomes this long, drawn-out, protracted transfer saga, because they already have the player that they need in the bag.
Yeah. What do Newcastle do then if he goes?
Well, I think so we've just looked at it from a Liverpool perspective. Now, if we want to look at it from a Newcastle United perspective, what I actually believe is that you've asked the wrong question. I think that what they need to do for Newcastle, for the benefit of Newcastle, if I was involved at Newcastle, if my priority was Newcastle, I would say you cannot allow this transfer to happen. No matter what it takes, block it. Block it in the way that Tottenham blocked Luka Modric going to Chelsea. Block it in the way that Tottenham blocked Harry Kane going to Man City.
But can you do that?
Yeah.
You know, nowadays player power and all of that.
Statement.
Right.
You don't allow the player to leave. Even if you take the principle, even if it costs you loads of money, even if it means that the player will not play for you and goes on strike and ends up sitting on your bench. Ultimately, Alexander Isak wants to play football in a World Cup year. He needs to be scoring goals and playing football. I think that what Newcastle United need to do is show to the world that they are a serious club, and serious clubs do not sell their best players. And sometimes you need to make the statement to the world that you cannot come and take our best. Alexander Isak has signed a contract. He's tied to Newcastle United for 3 more years. He needs to honour that contract from a Newcastle perspective.
I guess, you know, if you're being really cynical about it, if any club can do that, aside from Manchester City,
Newcastle.
Yeah, Newcastle have got that. You know, they've got deep pockets. I mean, I don't know if they're deep.
The problem is you don't want unhappy players at your club, but I would argue that having an unhappy player at your club is actually a better situation than selling your best player because of the noise that it makes. Look at what Tottenham did. Before Luka Modric went to Real Madrid, he went on strike. People forget. He went on strike. Chelsea were desperate to sign him. Roman Abramovich was desperate to sign him. Modric wanted to come for Chelsea. He didn't play for a couple of games at the beginning of the season. He then put in one of the best seasons that he ever had in the Premier League. He was one of the Premier League's best players, one of the best midfielders in the world that year, which is when, the following year, Daniel Levy did what he wanted to do, which was stop him signing for a Premier League rival because of the statement that it makes, sold him to Real Madrid. You can hold on to your players. There are examples that you can hold on to your players. I think that what Newcastle need to do is do everything within their power, regardless of how messy it gets, to not allow Isak to leave.
So I guess you could be looking at it like, you know, say if Newcastle did that, you know, Isak doesn't play this season, you know, and I don't think this happens myself.
No, I don't think. I think he plays for Liverpool.
Yeah.
I think he goes to Liverpool,
Yeah.
and I totally understand why he goes to Liverpool and why he wants to. I'm saying from a Newcastle perspective, that's what they should do.
Right, and then next season get sold to Real Madrid or, you know, whoever's in.
Yeah, and then next season you've then got a year to try and convince him to stay with your project. You've then got a year to try and say, look, what we're building here is going to satisfy your ambition. We're going to build a team over the next 2 years that is going to compete for the Premier League title. We're in the Champions League this year. They have a good run in the Champions League. They bring in some other players, and maybe they whet the appetite of Alexander Isak to stay on Tyneside.
All right, well, let's switch attention then to my club, to Arsenal and the business that we've done. How much of a chance do you give them, you know, now that URGES is through the door, etc., etc., how much of a chance do you give Arsenal of catching Liverpool?
A huge chance. They have a chance. I mean, I think if you're looking at favourites for the league, I think Arsenal are second and Liverpool are first. The gap between the two, I think, is quite large, but certainly not insurmountable. If you're an Arsenal fan or involved at Arsenal or Mikel Arteta, you truly have to believe that you can win the league, and they can. I don't think they're there yet, though. I think they need more than one signing, more than one statement signing. Look, it was a long deal, but they brought in Zubimendi, which has elevated the midfield. Definitely elevated the midfield. That deal was going on
forever, wasn't it? It was meant to be done in January, and it's
elevated the midfield. It's a very good signing. They've brought in the centre forward that they need. It's an unproven centre forward in the Premier League, but it's the best that they could go and get. It was the right signing for them. But for me, it's not enough. That immediately changes if you were to say the words, Arsenal have signed Eberechi Eze. And earlier we spoke to Ben Jacobs, didn't we?
Yeah.
Who told us that could well be the case.
I mean, if that happens, I do think it takes things up a notch. You know, I really do. You
Definitely.
know, I think the amount that we rely on Martin Ødegaard for that creativity. He's the only creative outlet in that midfield. You know, I know Declan Rice can do a thing as well, but, you know, he's not been brought in for that. Martin Ødegaard, the responsibility lies with him, and if we can share some of that with a player like Eze, I mean, that's...
Also, just think about what Eze would represent. He would be... Like, Eberechi Eze is ready to sign for a top-tier team competing for top-tier silverware. He's proved that. He's proved that because he's done the business for England when asked, and he's proved it because of the incredibly significant contribution that he had at Wembley, winning Crystal Palace their first ever piece of silverware, winning Crystal Palace the FA Cup, beating Pep Guardiola's Man City in a final, in what was supposed to be Kevin De Bruyne's swan song, that ended up being a story of Crystal Palace's brilliance. That is a man that is like a coiled spring ready to be launched into a club like Arsenal. And when you think about certain players, and I don't know if this is like me being romantic about it or whatever, romantic about football, some players, they feel like they belong at certain clubs. And there's a world where you could imagine Eberechi Eze gliding down the wing at the Emirates and potentially creating some very uncomfortable conversations about Martin Ødegaard. Because if Ødegaard's performances were anything like they were last year, Eberechi Eze will be deployed as a number 10, and Martin Ødegaard will be out of the team.
It gets tricky, doesn't it? Because he's obviously the club captain as well.
He's got to elevate his performances.
Yeah.
If there's somebody breathing down his neck, he'll have to elevate his performances.
I agree. I completely agree. And just a word on, you know, from you actually on Noni Madueke, just because he was playing for Chelsea. He's come in to Arsenal. He got a lot of stick for it. A lot of Chelsea fans were glad to see him go. But, you know, sometimes a change of scenery can really turn your career around. Do you think maybe under the guidance of Mikel Arteta, Noni Madueke can flourish?
Look, I think Madueke's a good player. I think he's a good player who's potentially going to be a very good player. At the moment, he isn't a very good player. At the moment, he's a decent player. It depends what you've signed him for, Nick. If you've signed Noni Madueke to start for you, if Mikel Arteta has done something similar to what he did with Kai Havertz, where he signed him to maybe redeploy him in a different position, redefine him, make him your left winger, something like that, I don't think it's a good signing at all. If Noni Madueke's been brought in to play League Cup games, to play Champions League games that are maybe dead rubbers, to play at home against teams that are considered to be beatable opposition, then I think it's an excellent signing. But to be totally honest with you, as things stand, when you're looking at who else Arsenal have brought in, I worry for Arsenal that you've brought him in to be a starter, to be a player that maybe rivals Trossard Martinelli on the other wing, which isn't even his position.
So in a roundabout way, you don't think it's a fantastic signing?
I think it's a fantastic signing if you've brought him in to be a backup, to be a backup player.
Okay.
If you've brought him in to start, problematic.